Previously on the Trogly's Guitar Show. Check out this Les Paul. Beautiful quilt top, very unique features. I traded that Les Paul for the Custom Shop DC model. What is this thing? It's a freak! I've done it again. We've traded for a new Tak Matsumoto model. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. That's right, the Tak Matsumoto trade train keeps on chugging. I'm very happy to announce that we now get to document the ebony custom version of Tak's unique double cut guitar. If you missed the first two videos, don't worry, we'll catch you up on who Tak Matsumoto is here in a second. But let's go ahead and get our first impressions here. It's like a black Les Paul custom that has been transformed into this new double cut shape. It's basically a Les Paul as far as down here, but then it gets some double cut elements towards the top horns. It really truly is its own thing. And prior to today, I didn't realize these were ever sold in the USA outside of the Epiphone branding, but apparently this one was made to hit in America because I was able to find an old Guitar Center ad for these listing for a $4,000 retail, which is kind of cool because Tak is a Japanese signature artist. In the 90s, when Gibson started to do signature versions of an already signature guitar, they started with the big five: the Jimmy Page Les Paul, the Joe Perry models, the Ace Frehley Budokan Custom, and of course the beginning of the Slash models. But the fifth of that bunch is actually Tak Matsumoto. He was part of that big five and the first Japanese signature artist to get a signature Gibson guitar all the way back in 1999. But he's part of the best-selling rock duo group in Japan called Bees. For us American viewers, look at him as Japan's Slash. He's a household name for his entire genre. He is big. He's had tons of Epiphones, Gibson USA, as well as custom shop guitars since then, such as the yellow Les Paul, the Tak Burst. He's had some very interesting Firebirds. But then we've got his really unique double cuts, from this really awesome blue color to a gorgeous root beer, straight up gold tops, cherry reds, Carina body constructed ones. However, one thing that's consistent across pretty much every single signature model of his: you've got the Burstbucker 2 and 3, they're a zebra bobbin, they incorporate black binding, which is very unique within Gibson's lore. You only have 3 control knobs on them, you get abalone inlays that must be trapezoids, and he likes the black binding on the neck too, and he likes the Les Paul style headstock. That's right, those Firebirds are freaks. And his name has to be on the guitar somewhere. Sometimes it's the headstock very faint, other times like on the Les Pauls it'll be right on the upper bow. And then there's this model. All of the regular Tak attributes are pretty much gone. I never realized this was such a black sheep of the family until I got it in my hands because, yeah, we've got our regular binding here, just multiply like a straight up black Les Paul custom. You still have the uncovered pickups, but they're no longer his signature zebra bobbins or cream plastics. We don't have our regular rosewood fretboard, and we have mother of pearl block inlays, so no abalone in sight. Tak Matsumoto is not on the headstock or on the body of the guitar. It's been moved to the truss rod cover, so technically it's optional. You could remove that, and now we've got all this cool custom emblem stuff. The only Tak thing remaining for this one really comes down to the 3 controls. I'm surprised he didn't modify that. So it's kind of funny, the one that I know was available in America, they took all the Tak things off. The whole abalone zebra thing, you find lots of custom orders over in Japan borrowing that due to Tak's influence. So why does this model exist for the year 2012? It wasn't an Americanized version. It was to celebrate in 2010 Tak joining forces with Larry Carlton, a jazz guitarist, for the Take Your Pick album, where they did a blend of Eastern and Western styles together. And Tak doesn't have to do anything that he doesn't want, so I imagine the blending of those musics, he wanted a new signature that kind of reflected that, the more traditional style from the 50s being thrown on his very unique double cut design. So yeah, it's strange, but it's also kind of built within history. I honestly like this a lot more than I thought I was going to, holding it in person, because it just always looks so strange on reverb ads. But with this being produced in 2012, we actually have a Richlight fretboard on this model, and I did not realize that before today. Now, once you play Richlight in a little bit, it starts to look way better than it did brand new, but that is something to keep in mind whether you might like this model or not. But if you can't or don't want to afford the Gibson version, which typically show up in the $3,000 to $4,500 range, there's there's also an Epiphone version of this that you could find in 2014. And as I was saying earlier, if you like any of those guitars, odds are there is an Epiphone and a custom shop variety of them, sometimes even Gibson USA. When it comes to the guys who have had the most Epiphones and Gibsons, it's Slash Bonamassa and Tak Matsumoto. Another thing I'm noticing is this one is a lot heavier than this particular one, so you tell me which one looks better, the more traditional Gibson vibes with a regular Gibson headstock, or do you like the Tak-isms, I suppose you could say, with the abalone inlay and his name on the headstock? Holding these in my hand, I'm actually surprised how different they look just due to the custom multi-ply binding versus the single-ply black. They almost don't even look like the same shape. But I'd love to keep the Tak Matsumoto model trades going, so if you have another Tak model that you'd like to trade for the ebony one, feel free to reach out, because I'm having fun documenting all these. But this one is being sent off to its new home, and we are going to have some fun tearing this one apart, cleaning it up to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Well, this one shined up beautifully. Let's go ahead and document this beast. So our pickups, as we were talking earlier, you've got double black bobbins. Not all that uncommon, but strange for this model. However, you'll notice you still have the gold pull pieces right here. So it's like somebody just took the pickup covers off look. So if you're trying to verify if one is original or not, one quick look at your adjustable pull pieces, you should see gold if stock. But on the backside, it's marked Burstbucker number 2, wound by Fan Seri, and Burstbucker 3 in the bridge. As far as the cavities that they sleep on, it's a long neck tenon constructed guitar with no real markings in here, and it's a bit hard to see, but you can just barely make out the maple top joining onto your mahogany body. The spec sheet says it is a 2-piece top, and if you get it in the light just right, this one's really tricky, but you can see a very vague outline of your center seam. As far as the condition of the pickups on the outside, they're looking clean. However, the bridge definitely has some picking and string wear to it. But speaking of our bridge, it is a full ABR1 mounted historically. This is a custom shop produced guitar. This one looks like this and has the Gibson ABR1 branding. It does not have a retainer wire, however they stay in very firm. And here's a look at the tailpiece. You can see most of the gold is worn off the top, but it is lightweight aluminum. Now that I think about it, since this is dressed up like a black Les Paul Custom, I'm surprised he didn't go full-on 50s vintage mode and have him just do a straight-up mahogany body without a maple top. That would have made this run cooler, in my opinion. I take it he's not a fan of 3 humbuckers, which I totally get. And you might say, well, he needs to have the maple top for tones. Well, he's got those Carino ones, so he's definitely open for some experimentation. But that would have been something that could have made it even more special. But no, it's just a 2-piece maple top. But as far as your controls, I get readings of 8.6 in the bridge position, neck 8.17, and together 4.19. I believe this will be our bridge volume, confirmed. Neck volume, yep. And then this is just a master tone, so he must not have a need for a tone for each individual pickup. It's strange, but it has been done before by like Billy Gibbons. But here's a close look at our 7-ply binding running along the entirety of the guitar with a predominantly white/cream color versus his typical single-ply black. But we do still have a poker chip on this model right here. If you want to compare this model to other double cuts, you should check out that other episode, but here's a few snippets from there. These really are basically their just whole own thing, but they feel a lot like a Les Paul. I mean, the bottom is very similar, it's just the top that's different. So most double cuts, when Gibson makes them, they move their toggle switches down here. So that's kind of an interesting feature of these. Now we can move on from our mahogany body maple top to our mahogany neck and Richlight fretboard, but at least we still have the real mother of pearl inlays. Late 2011 is when the Richlight stuff started, so this was a very early model to feature Richlight, but it still has the 12-inch fretboard radius with a Gibson 24 3/4-inch scale, a nut width of 1.69 inches, increasing to 2.09, and it's advertised as a Tak neck profile, so that's 0.85 at the first fret neck depth and 0.94 by the 12th. It's a rounded C shape in what I would consider medium territory. Medium to medium thin. It's definitely not a huge neck profile by any means. Here's a look at that neck profile, 1st fret and 12th fret. Kind of interesting. Almost a slightly asymmetrical C shape in the chording areas, but then it's just a regular 1 by the 12th. But now our headstock, it's no longer dusty, so that's always a good thing, but this just has such a good look to it. This reminds me exactly of the 50s Les Paul Customs with their plastic tuner tips. That straight up mother of pearl Gibson logo, custom emblem, and our truss rods are working perfectly, so I can make the trade 100%, no doubt. And here's a look at the special for this model, Tak Matsumoto engraved historic style truss rod cover. The historic ones have that wider beveled white edge to them. They just look so fancy. It looks great with the engraving. And with the tuners being vintage in style, that means you've got these push-in bushings versus the screwed-on kind. They have less of a profile on the headstock. Moving on to the backside, this cleaned up even better than the front. Do you have a little bit of scratches here and there? Yeah, but it's an ebony finish. I'd say the worst things condition-wise are a couple of scratches on your neck. There's like an impression on the headstock right there, but thankfully all the other scuffs cleaned up really nicely. No worries about a headstock break. But up here by our serial number, you can see where somebody left a clip-on tuner in multiple locations that just discolored the finish. So I'm curious if we'll see anything under blacklight on the front, but I didn't notice any impressions. So that's not too bad if it's not on the front. But here's what the wiring looks like, stock from the factory. Nothing looks modified here. You just have your 3 Gibson branded pots. However, if you wanted to ruin the value of your guitar, you could add an additional one right there. Or if you want your bridge set to a certain one, you could technically just throw it in the cavity, wire it up, and preset it to whatever you need it to be. Just some food for thought for somebody who that might be an option to. But we've got our gold jack plate. This one has been swapped into Schaller strap locks. Your other one is right here on the horn. And these do have a slightly modified toggle switch cavity route. Just a little bit smaller than on a Les Paul, because it needs to be. The backplate also only utilizes 2 screws versus 3. The other one's just the same. I did not see any mention of weight relief on this model, but we already talked a little bit about the neck here. Just a couple of scuffs and scratches. So here's a look at the backside of our tuners. They just read Gibson Deluxe. They are double line single ring Clusons. And the serial is kind of hard to read, but it looks like it says Tak 2063. So that probably means this was the 63rd one of these made for 2012. Do a quick blacklight test here. Everything looks okay on the front. It's a fairly new guitar, so you're not going to see a lot of glowing. I don't see any marks on the face of the headstock, so at least we were thankfully spared from that. In fact, I don't even see the ones back here, so it must not have affected the lacquer too much outside of just impressing it on the back. But everything is looking good on this one. Outside of it looks like maybe a little bit of stand rash, but thankfully it's a black finish, so you're not really going to notice that. And our body's also good. All said and done, Tak Custom weighs 7 pounds, 13.9 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this version sounds. After listening to some of their concerts together, I totally understand this now, why it needed to be a little bit underdressed. I highly suggest checking out their concerts. There's a little bit of rock mixed in there. It's not just complete jazzy, but they've got some great licks. Like, I don't play guitar all that well, but even I was able to pick that up from Tak. Within about 5 minutes, and also in some of those videos you can see kind of a weird prototype of this that has the smaller headstock. It looks so out of place. They also have like a brass truss rod cover going for like BB King style. I kind of like what they did here with the larger headstock though. But let's get some general tone tests now. I'd say those are some pretty nice cleans. Really like that middle position. Now that we know all about the Tak Matsumoto in the Les Paul Custom format, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Glad I took the trade. Personally, I prefer my old flame top over this one, but then again, those are a lot more expensive than this version. I think it just comes down to there actually was a USA release on these, so you can find them in the United States. It's not as hard as the other models. But I'm really glad I took it in on trade anyways, because it continues our Tak journey, and I understand this one just a little bit better as to why it is different than the others, and I actually realize it is so vastly different. But if you've got a Tak model you want to trade towards this one, feel free to hit me up. I would just love to keep the Matsumoto train going, because it just seems to naturally work out that eventually somebody says, hey, I want to trade this model for that one. But you can also find it for sale on my website, troglysguitarshow.com, and then I'll just buy more Taks. But alright, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. No, this was not an even trade. The black ebony model is not worth as much as the flametop models. We've got a guitar brand that I've never talked about on the show that we're going to have some fun with very soon.